Yo, what's up, humans? Here's a video from me talking about life. I'll try to keep this short. I just want to talk about metaphysics, because I'm writing a book on this. My next book is called Experience Theory, and I call it Idealist Metaphysics for Engineers and Skeptics. Because most engineers who study and learn about physics and chemistry end up seeing the world through the physicalist lens, which is that everything is objective, everything is made of material fundamentally. And it can seem like that when you learn physics and chemistry, because that's how you think of atoms, is that they're these little entities, who knows what, but they're like little dots, and they swirl around and follow certain rules that build our world. And if you don't study philosophy and metaphysics, you might not even realize that that's not the only option. In the grand scheme of things, when we're trying to figure out life, just labeling everything as a physical object is not the only way to understand the universe. Let me just follow the story here. The way physicalist view works is that material is fundamental. And if you follow this upward, we'll build the universe from that perspective. Physical material does some interacting with itself and creates separate individual entities we call subatomic particles. And that's when the singularity expanded into all the particles and made the universe, which we call that the Big Bang. So it's important to clarify that physicalist view and the idealist view are just different interpretations of the same scientific facts. So whatever the singularity was in the Big Bang, the physicalist view would say that that was an object with no experience. But the idealist view would say that it was an experience. Rather than thinking of it as a single object that expanded into many objects, it was a single experience that expanded into many experiences. So that shouldn't seem far-fetched. Those are two different ways to interpret the data. And then the story's the same on both sides. Those subatomic particles interact with each other and create galaxies. Either way, some planets orbit stars, end up with the right chemistry for plants, animals, and other life forms. And then in the end, animals and humans pop out on the planets. So, isn't that interesting? Here we are, we're humans on a planet. Which view makes more sense? Was it material expanding from a singularity all that time? And then animals just evolved and all of a sudden the first consciousness in the universe was animals on Earth? Or was it conscious the whole time? And then when animals grew on the earth, they were automatically consciousness because they're just made of the consciousness that everything is made of. I think this makes way more sense. Because you're not going to have all these problems explaining the physicalist world generating consciousness. Because this really doesn't make sense. The idea that consciousness can emerge from non-conscious materials is logically invalid. As far as we know, in reasonable reality, when you build something, it's going to be made out of the things you built it with. For example, if you build a wooden bridge, you have to build that out of wood. You can't build a wooden bridge out of bricks. Logically, that doesn't work. And it's the same thing here. How are you going to take a bunch of unconscious atoms and swirl them around the right way in the shape of a human brain and all of a sudden, beautiful sights and visions, wow. That doesn't make sense. It's not really logically valid at all. So they call that the hard problem of consciousness. But the hard problem is solved immediately and easily by just switching to the other view. If it was consciousness the whole time, that explains why animals are conscious. That explains why we are conscious. Subatomic particles emerged from the Big Bang. It's just that the nature of that was a single conscious experience splitting into lots of experiences interacting with itself. So the universe is one consciousness. And that kind of means that we're all the same person, interacting with ourselves, even though we see each other as different humans. And hey, that's the main thing I want to talk about. That's why we should have world peace. Because we're the same person, really. Humans grew on planet Earth. If we were seeing ourselves accurately, we would see ourselves as one life form that emerged in the universe, and the entire universe is our experience. So that tells us what the meaning of life is. We're here for ourselves. We just made this up. for fun, basically, to have good experience. As I talk about in my book, some more details like why do atoms follow the laws of physics? Because it feels good to them. It might be weird to stretch your mind around it because we're used to thinking as only humans are conscious. But no, atoms are conscious. They don't have brains, so they don't think, oh, which chemical reaction should I do today? They're just atoms, so they just have no thoughts, and they just probably have some sort of vision and sound or feeling, and they interact with the other atoms, and they do whatever feels good. And what feels good is coming together and forming little tribes called molecules. Hey, when that evolves into creatures on the planets, what do? Well, we form tribes, and it feels good to hang out with each other. Yeah, no kidding. This view of the universe makes perfect sense. And each atom actually does have free will. They just normally follow the same patterns, they always follow the same patterns because it feels good to follow those patterns. Atoms don't have brains to think, should I deviate from the laws of physics today? No, you can think of them as having no brain. They just do whatever feels good. And those are like our ancestors. That's what we evolved from, which is why we tend to want to do things that feel good. So once we update our worldview to the idealist view, not only will science make perfect sense and the Big Bang makes more sense, and we solve the hard problem of consciousness, and we understand the universe perfectly now, awesome. Not only that, but now we know who we are. Now we can have world peace, because we're all the same experiencer. We all come from the same Big Bang. We all were one person having a single experience before the universe expanded. So now that we're expanded, we're looking at each other and we think we're different people. Who are you? I'm afraid of you. Let's have a war. That is so silly, because we're actually the same person. We're all one. And once we recognize that we come from the same source, there's no reason for us to fight or have conflict or argue about who should be the boss or who should make the decisions. We should just do what makes sense, We should probably vote on things. Everything will make perfect sense when we get the big picture right. So I think this is just about the most important thing in the world. If you find that interesting, I've got a book for you coming soon. And the last thing I would mention is sometimes when it comes down to this debate between physicalist and idealist views, we talk about NCCs, which are neural correlates of consciousness. And that is just about neuroscientists studying the brain and noticing that certain things happen physically in the brain that correlate with certain feelings and experiences on the inside. And so some neuroscientists will jump to the conclusion that that means the brain is generating conscious experience. But that's not necessarily the case. Under the idealist view, conscious experience, due to the way it's split into all the atoms, is creating the physical brain, actually. So that's backwards. But either way, the fact that we observe NCCs does not prove it either way. The only way to prove it either way is to try to build the big picture that works complete. You need a theory of everything that works completely. And you will see that physicalism doesn't work because you can't build a complete view of the world with this. There will always be a hole called the hard problem of consciousness. We won't be able to explain why humans are conscious. But when you explain it this way, there's no hard problem of material because consciousness can just imagine materials. The human mind is just noticing all the other experiences of all the other atoms and then summarizing that with a vision. So it looks like I'm in a physical world, but I'm actually not. It's all experience. And there's NCCs because the activities in my brain do correlate to what I'm thinking. But that's because the atoms in my brain are little bits of consciousness, and they're moving according to what the consciousness is doing. And we just call that the physical brain, but in reality, it's a collection of atoms, and each atom is a conscious experience from the inside. So how cool is that? Alright, well, I'll make more videos talking about this stuff when I have time. That's all for now.